After spending several days on top of the largest flat-top mountain in America, my riding buddy, Eben, and I decided to descend into the desert of Moab to escape the incoming cold weather and storms that were about to hit the mountaintop where we were. As we rolled into Moab well after dark, we were simply seeking a place to sleep for a few hours, not the perfect camp spot. Eben wound up camping, or at least sleeping, on the table behind me while I hung my hammock in between these two posts. And it turned out to be a really spectacular spot right next to the Green River. I had paddled this section a few years back, and it's more than enough excitement to wake up to this kind of view in the morning. After a quick coffee, we packed up the few supplies that we had unloaded and headed into Moab to grab a quick breakfast and to explore the area to see what potential Moab had for us for camping and escaping the storm. The days prior, the temperatures were in the 100s. In fact, the day before we arrived, it was 105. And I was pretty happy to have that warmth to escape the incoming storm. Little did we know what was ahead. Since I had spent so much time in Moab in the past, my intention was to show Eben some of the highlights, some of the spectacular scenery and places to visit while we were here on this short adventure. But one of the first places I decided that I wanted to show Eben was a place I first visited back in 2011 on my first motorcycle adventure out west.
This is not the spot. I don't know if I can get there. Sand's so deep. That may be the worst spot. Dude, I came in. Did you see how twisted up I got? Dude, if I didn't have this tire on there, I'd be crushed. That's the spot over there. I just don't remember how to get there.
And this place is amazing. It's just above the river on the plateau, and it overlooks a canyon that is hard to describe without showing you a few pictures. But I really wanted to get onto the rim of this canyon, take a few pictures, but I was not expecting the deep sand that we encountered because I'd never seen this before. But we finally made it to our point and used this opportunity to take a few pictures, a photo op. That's part of the journey anyway. After we both explored the canyons and the plateau outside of Moab, I decided we should escape the heat by traveling to the other side of Moab up into the LaSalle Mountains. As you go up in altitude, of course, your temperature decreases, and that's where I decided that we should spend the night. Just before the storm came in. Did not know the storm was going to come in the morning. There's like a big pile of rain over there coming down. Adventure Cat, what do you think? Is there any food on this motorcycle? Or are you just ready to go on an adventure? If you piss on my bike, I'm gonna kick your ass across the damn campground. He's trying to get up there. Oh, he sees a bird or something. He's hunting.
Can't reach the handlebars.
Where's the key? Let's go. I'm ready. All right, you want to take a stab at lapse rate? You want to introduce the topic?
Sure. Lapse rate. Get higher, get colder. It's that simple.
Is there an inverse of that formula?
Yeah, you go down and you get warmer, I guess.
So what would you suggest using the lapse rate formula? What would you suggest, since my hands are cold, what would you suggest we do since we're at 7,000 plus feet? What would you suggest we do?
Well, if you don't have an idea what temperature it is nearby, you look at a local town and try to figure out its altitude. And if that altitude seems to be less than yours and it looks warmer, head there. If you know of a town that you want to go to and it's cold already, that is at a higher altitude, expect it's probably going to be colder than it is where you are.
So maybe you can explain why we're in Moab right now at the end of summer, when the last time we checked it was 105 degrees.
Yeah.
So why would somebody foolish enough riding around on a motorcycle, why would you put them in a situation to come to Moab when we looked at the weather when we left, it was 105 degrees? Why would you do something silly like that?
Well, we were looking at where we left, which was about to snap cold. The Eagle's Nest, wonderful perch that we were sharing atop the Land's End overlook, which was the prime spot, was about to get medieval. We were sitting up there, and the vehicle dust is really kind of what chased us out, but we knew that in just a couple of nights' time, that would snap so cold that people were wondering it would snow. And otherwise, we were sitting there in 60, 70, even 80 degree temperature with a slight breeze.
But I mean, what was the primary reason that we were concerned about snow at that campsite?
Because that campsite was 10,500 feet off the deck. I mean, Grand Junction was 6,000 feet beneath us, so it would have snowed on that plateau, that mesa. But if we'd have gone down to Grand Junction, we'd have been comfortable temperature and look up in there and see the top of that mesa covered with snow. And that's the difference right there. It's like 5.3 or 5.8 degrees per 1,000 feet. But when you're talking about
one more time, what was that number again?
I can't remember exactly. It was 5.3 or 5.8 degrees Fahrenheit per 1,000 feet. Yeah.
That sounds about what I remember.
So it's colder upper and warmer downer.
Always.
Well, I suppose there's some patterns that can change that. So if you got like cool cave air running out of somewhere, or a valley with like a lot of water or something like that, the
But it's a rule. It's kind of a rule. It's not.
Yeah.
There's maybe some exceptions, but
If Earth was Mars and Mars had an atmosphere and there was no wind flowing everywhere, and those weather patterns were not part of the table, you go up, you get cold, you go down, you get warm.
that's pretty good. That's pretty good. In retrospect, had I known the weather was going to come in that early, or be that cold, or even a little bit wet, I would have suggested that we leave much earlier, as it was fairly warm that night. Just really did not expect it to go from high 90s to low 30s and below. I think it was probably below freezing when we left camp that morning. But I guess you live and you learn. Things are wacky out west. What is that white stuff that's landing in your hair?
Soap?
Soap?
Yeah, I needed it. I needed to, get at the roots of my scalp.
Well, it's sticking to the camera, so I don't know. But it is freaking snowing just above Moab, and it's September 7th, 8th. Snow. The rain has turned to snow. What a joyous departure we're having. Let's get to the low desert. As we departed in the morning, I decided that all we had to do is get down to a lower altitude to escape the cold and hopefully the rain and the snow. But all we really escaped was the rain. As we left the Moab area and headed north towards the interstate, the rain stopped and became warmer just briefly before it got really cold. I noticed Eben was having a hard time and seemed like he was really unprepared equipment-wise for winter, as was I, but my heated grips were making up the difference for me. Eben, on the other hand, was really suffering, so we pulled over at a jerky stop with some weird decorations around the parking lot. As we left the first rest stop, it became more and more apparent that Eben was really suffering. His gloves were ineffective, maybe because they had been wet before, but he had very little wind protection and just simply not the right gear for the environment we were riding through. So we made another stop to fuel up, and I got on to a Facebook group that I joined a few months earlier called Bunka Biker, and just looked at the map to find somebody that might host us overnight to withstand the weather before we headed to the Bonneville Salt Flats. And within 10 minutes of sending the first email, I got a response, and he welcomed us both. And luckily, we found a place just south of Salt Lake City, someone to host us overnight with a warm bed and a shower. And it was my first experience with Bunka Biker, but I won't soon forget that experience. So after we hung up with our new host, we headed towards Spanish Fork, just south of Salt Lake City.